Okay, good evening, everyone. We'll call our council meeting of February the 7th to order at exactly 6 o'clock. First on the agenda, we have a public meeting under section 17 and 34 of the Planning Act. Section 17 deals with an official plan amendment, and section 34 deals with the zoning, the appropriate zoning bylaw to go along with that OPA. Before we start, I would ask, does any member of council have a pecuniary interest with this particular application that we'll be dealing with tonight? Councillor Powers, go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Mayor Taylor. I have declared a pecuniary interest related to this matter, as I am an employee of the city of Peterborough. So I have submitted the appropriate paperwork to the clerk. Perfect.
Thank you very much, Councillor Powers. So Heather, I guess you will escort Councillor Powers into the waiting room. And Nick, we'll be in touch when we're finished. Thank you. Okay, Heather, so that's easy. That's done. All right. So as I said, this is a public meeting. I'm going to turn it over to our staff first for a staff report, and then council will have the opportunity to ask our staff questions before we turn it over to the public. So I see our planner is here, Ken Scullion. Ken, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Mayor Taylor, I believe Kent Randall is handling this application.
Okay, sorry. Oh, Kent, there you are. Kent Randall.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor.
We'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. So just first off, just a little preamble as required in the Planning Act. This is a public meeting for official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment, as Mayor Taylor stated, held under section 17 and 34 of the Planning Act. If a person or public body that would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the council of the township of Otonabee-South to the Ontario Lands Tribunal, sorry, I'll probably make that mistake a couple times, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the township of Otonabee-South before the bylaws passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the township of Otonabee-South before the bylaws passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Lands Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Notification for these applications was circulated to all required agencies and landowners within 120 meters of the subject property at least 20 days prior to this meeting, in accordance with the applicable Planning Act regulations. Notification was also posted on the township website. So this official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment are related to property at 1923 Baseline Road. The application submitted by DM Wills and Associates is on behalf of City and County of Peterborough. It is, of course, related to a proposed organics facility to be located just north of the existing City and County waste management facility or the Bedford landfill. The proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment are required to redesignate and rezone the property to permit the proposed use. They currently have the property currently has an agricultural designation and an agricultural zone, which of course do not permit the proposed facility. So these amendments are required to facilitate that. So in terms of what's being proposed, the facility is, as I stated, intended to accommodate organics waste. I think council is pretty familiar with the proposal by now, but I'll go over it briefly. So the facility is, the city and county are intending to eventually eliminate organics waste or ban landfilling of organics waste. And in order to achieve that goal, they want to establish this facility just north of the Bedford landfill. The facility is going to use a GORE aeration technology that will break down the organics that are delivered there and eventually resulting in composting materials. And I do see that, just quickly, I do see that Diana Kay and Mike Lord from Wills are here, so they could probably answer the questions and related to the technology and related to the facility itself. At this point, we are still in the review process. There were a number of studies that were submitted in support of the applications. We have a number of peer review consultants that have gone through or in the process of going over those studies just to ensure that everything checks out. So that is still ongoing. So at this point, we're not prepared to provide any recommendation for approval or denial or otherwise. At this point, we are recommending deferral of the applications until such time that the peer review comments have been addressed. So that's where we're at in the process at this point. I think what I'll do if council doesn't have any questions, or actually I'll send it back to Taylor, and perhaps you can take it from here in terms of whether you'd like the applicant to speak. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Kent. Yeah, so the way we proceed here is that's your report. Council has read it. They've listened to your comments. Now we'll just ask if any member of council have a question either to our planning consultant or our planner regarding this application. Are there any questions? Deputy Mayor, go ahead, Bonnie.
Thank you, through the mayor. Just refresh my memory. This will be to the city planners. Is this facility open to receiving outside our county organic waste?
What we should do, before we go any further, I'm going to ask Diana and/or Mike, do you intend to speak to council tonight regarding this application? When I do ask, does anybody want to speak in support of the application? Will you be speaking?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. At this point, because the information that the township has received is currently being reviewed, we're here for any information that council or members of the public are requesting or to answer any questions.
Okay, so you don't have a presentation for us per se. Okay, so then that's fine. Then if whoever wants to tackle the questions as they come through, feel free, whether it be our staff or the consultants for the applicant.
And through you, Mayor Taylor, I can certainly wait till the end, like it doesn't matter.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure that if the representatives for the applicant were going to make a presentation, your question and several others might be more appropriate at the end of that, but that's not apparently the case. So we'll just let, as the questions come through, I think it's fine just to let whoever can answer them do so. So the question then from Deputy Mayor was, will this organic facility be receiving product from outside of the County of Peterborough? Who can answer that one?
I'll probably have the applicant's planner answer that. Mayor Taylor.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. The facility at this point will only review and intend to receive material from the city. However, I believe, and I will have Mike or James correct me if I'm wrong, the intent is over time to receive material from surrounding municipalities. At the point of where the facility needs to expand or initiate a program where it will start to receive material from other municipalities. It's not immediate, but it would be in the future. So I don't know if Mike or James can elaborate on that. I just don't want to misspeak on the timing, but I believe immediately it's just the city, but with the intent in the future to be surrounding municipalities.
Yeah, Diana, through you, Mayor Taylor. The facility, so there's sort of two aspects. The application to the Ministry of Environment for an environmental compliance approval will be submitted, and the service area will be all of Ontario. However, the project will be phased in such a way where phase one will accept material from the County of Peterborough and the City of Peterborough. Some time ago, in all of the lower tier municipalities within the County of Peterborough, Some time ago, the city engaged Stantec to complete a study for them. I think that study was in 2009. And they actually looked at the potential for organic materials to come from, so that would be SSO, source separated organics, as well as leaf and yard waste from the counties of Northumberland, Hastings, the city of Kawartha Lakes, and the county of Haliburton. And so there's been a tremendous amount of interest from surrounding municipalities because they don't, the cost for waste management is related to trucking. And so there's been most of those municipalities that I just mentioned do not have an organics processing facility. So the intent is that phase 1 of the project will involve the county and the city of Peterborough only. And then as the interest in the facility grows, hence the need for the service area to include Ontario. And because there's a limitation in terms of trucking. So you're not, I don't think you're going to see material come from the GTA, primarily because trucking costs are too exorbitant. But some of those other municipalities, such as the county of Haliburton, Hastings, city of Kawartha Lakes, and Northumberland, could be contributing to the site in phase 2. But the application itself will be made for a maximum amount of 45,000. There's a limitation in terms of the amount that the facility can process. So 45,000 tons per year will be pushed through the facility, and the maximum amount of tonnage that would remain on site at any given time would be 90,000 tons. Hopefully that answers your question.
May not be the answer we wanted. Go ahead, Bonnie.
Yes, and to that point, never say never. So when you do have other facilities open, and I'm thinking about an aggregate pit, certainly with the size of the trucks that are going to be on our roads, I realize this is a county road, but we do have one taxpayer. I am concerned with the wear and tear and the maintenance with this amount of traffic and the potential to come in from outside our county. I mean, we're all for organic composting, but certainly not for our ratepayers here to pick up the costs of that road wear and tear. So is there compensation going to be given, to Otonabee-South Monaghan if they're coming in from the east? I would imagine it's number 7 highway, but of course County Road 2 to the south, and the same coming out of the city. The landfill is on a county road there. So has there any consideration been given to an agreement and compensation around that?
James, would you like to speak to that?
Further to, sorry, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Mayor. So I would go back to the tonnage. The facility originally was, the hope was there would be for city and county. The county said they would love to be customers of it, but considering that it was a lower tier responsibility, they couldn't commit for all of the lower tiers. So at this point, the city is building it with enough capacity to serve the city and county, but the hope is that the lower town, each of the townships will become customers on their own, or would take advantage of the opportunity. Again, it's a facility that can serve the city and county. In terms of the compensation, there is a royalty paid for the landfill, and the intent would be that it would be an act of city council. So I can't commit on behalf of the city at this point, but there definitely has been consideration that a similar royalty would be offered for the organics facility.
Okay, follow-up question, Bonnie, then I do have a comment. Go ahead.
Yes, and I can certainly wait and let you weigh in first, Mayor Taylor. I have a couple of follow-up questions. Would you prefer to go ahead?
Well, I may be going to make the same comments you are, so you go right ahead.
Okay, so the county has asked the city for a follow-up and just to let us know where this organic facility is at. And we have not yet in the county received a letter to give us an update on the facility and where it's at. So I would ask you as city representatives, if you could please follow up, not only the county, but OSM will be very interested in that letter. And my last question is, I know that COVID has caused problems. We did ask for a site visit. I think it was a facility in Kingston, because we're very concerned for our residents around odor from this facility, which we've been assured is not a problem. However, I certainly would be one. I know the Waste Management Committee and likely members here of council would be very interested. And where, at what point we had asked for it, what point is that in the works for us? And I don't want to do it when it's 20 below and the smell is curtailed. So.
Okay, so we staff and the applicants, consultants can take those questions back and provide answers for us. I would expect at a later date. Before I wade in here, I know Councillor Allen had his hand up. I'd like all members of council to have an opportunity before I wrap it up. So go ahead, Mark, you had a question, I believe.
Good evening. Thanks, Mayor Taylor. I did have a couple of questions. I think some of it's reviewed and are outlined in the report, but I was going to ask about the outstanding peer reviews, what the timelines on those. Do we know that, Kent, and when we might expect to hear back from those so that you can bring forth a follow-up recommendation? And I guess the other question is, seemingly, if it's before us tonight and the recommendation is to defer it, I just kind of interested as why it's here. That, I mean, is it a planning timing issue, or maybe just explain that to me?
Sure, through the mayor. So in terms of the peer review, we have one outstanding review that is from one of our peer review consultants that needs to be completed, and it should be completed fairly soon, like within the next couple of weeks. We provided the applicant with most of the peer review comments. From what I was gathering, and I'm not an expert in those specific fields, but it looked to me like there weren't too many outstanding comments that would be difficult to respond to. However, it's that obviously the applicant is responsible for providing a response in that respect. So, you know, depending on when we can receive those back and when we can have the final sign off, you know, I would anticipate within the next, 4 to 6 weeks or so. In terms of bringing it to council now, if we have what we typically do, EcoView, and what we've done in the past in the township is, if there is an application or applications like an OPA and ZBA that are fairly major, like this one, that has quite a bit of interest, we like to bring those to council for a public meeting without a recommendation for approval or denial or refusal. And the reason we do that is to not presume that our decision has been, or our recommendation has been set. We want to hear from the public. We want to hear from council, so that we can take in all of the, consider all of the public comments or council's comments before we make any sort of recommendation. We want to ensure that all of those comments have been addressed, rather than just providing you with the bylaw, right then and there. So we find that this is a good way to do that sort of thing when it does involve a proposal like this, such as this. So that's the reason for the deferral tonight.
If I can add to that, Kent, it would be very presumptuous to expect approval from a municipality during a public meeting or right after a public meeting. This is a statutory requirement of the Planning Act, the public meeting we're having tonight. And it's quite common for the report to come out after the public meeting, to refer back to staff, to address concerns and come back with answers. So that's exactly what we're doing tonight. Very standard process.
Yep.
Councillor Allen, did you have another question or?
No, that's all my questions for tonight or for this report.
Okay, thank you. I see Councillor Howie with his hand up. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Taylor. A question I got is in regards to the odor. You're saying that it's a low odor that will be coming from this plant, or, what happens if down the road with the expansion of this plant, is that going to increase the odor to the area?
Perhaps, Mayor Taylor, that's a question that the applicants can respond to.
Through you, Mayor Taylor. Councillor Howie, the Ministry of Environment is very, very diligent in their review of odor impact assessment reports. And the facility, in terms of, you had mentioned in the second phase, as the facility becomes bigger, we're modeling for that phase. So it's not just phase one, it's for the whole facility. The Ministry of Environment doesn't take kindly to the notion that you design for and do all of your impact assessments on a small facility and then hoodwink people to try to build a bigger facility in the future using the same documents. So the odor impact assessment report considers the full build out of the facility.
Great, good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from members of council? Deputy Mayor, go ahead, Bonnie.
Just one quick one. I've maybe missed it. You spoke about the city of Peterborough and the county using this facility. You didn't mention our First Nations, and have they been part of the peer review?
So I can speak to the Mayor Taylor to the First Nations question about review. So they are circulated. They are circulated the applications. There was an archaeological assessment that was undertaken. They typically, Curve Lake in particular, and Hiawatha as well. They typically will deal with or discuss the applications with the applicant on their own, separate from our review process. So we don't rely necessarily on them to provide us with any sort of sign off or any sort of comments directly. I don't think, Ken, we received anything yet from Hiawatha or Curve Lake. Yeah, so not at this point, and I'm not sure if the applicant has had any direct contact. I'll leave it with them to respond to that.
Diana, you want to speak to that or me?
Go ahead, you're unmuted.
Oh, you're so kind. Through you, Mayor Taylor. Yeah, we've taken from the beginning of the project, we've taken an approach where the consultation and engagement process included First Nations, and we've actually had 2 meetings with Hiawatha, Curve Lake. Alderville declined to participate, but also including the Mohawks of Scugog Island. And so what's happened is that Scugog and Hiawatha have, I don't think the word is deferred, but there's a level of capacity that's available at Curve Lake that certainly the application is still circulated to the other Indigenous communities. But when it comes to the capacity that Curve Lake has to participate in the archaeological work, we actually did a stage 1 and a stage 2 archaeological assessment on the property, and Curve Lake participated in that as well. So the First Nations have been involved in the project since day 1.
Okay, thank you. I've got a couple of comments and questions I'll just put out there, and then we can wrap up this portion of the public meeting. it's been my expectation, first of all, that there would be some sort of a compensation agreement between the city, county, and the township with regards to tonnage being brought into this facility. And I am not expecting anything different. And I have no reason to believe that the city and the county are expecting anything different either. So that should be built into the agreement and the approval process. I also think, and I hope I speak on behalf of council, I also think that all built into the approval process should also be a staged, and you're already doing that, a stage opening this facility. And as we move, or as you would like to move from stage one, which is products strictly from the city and county of Peterborough, into perhaps stage two and opening up to other areas, that would come to our township for further consultation and also approval. It means a lot to our township. There's a lot of moving parts to that. So, and it will affect us and our residents, of course, perhaps more than we understand and know. So there'll be some information that I think the council of the day will want before they go ahead and start opening this facility up to a product from outside of our area. So built into the agreement should be something to the effect that upon notification and approval from the township, the various stages will open up as you are planning. Okay. Certainly, I can't overemphasize the importance of consultation with First Nations, in particular Hiawatha. Make sure that that is done sufficiently. Make sure Hiawatha in particular is satisfied with the consultation process. It's something in Otonabee-South, Monaghan, and Hiawatha as our neighbors that we're very, very strong on and we take seriously. An operating question I have, I've been supportive of this facility and the concept right from the start, because my understanding is that will help reduce or possibly even eliminate methane gas coming from the landfill. And oddly enough, we have a delegation tonight who wants to speak to us about climate change, and methane gas is deadly with regards to its impact on the climate. So I want to confirm that that indeed is correct. And my question is, does the composting, this Gore technique of composting, does it also, is methane gas produced in the digestion of this material, or will it be eliminated from the landfill and then not produced at the recycling, which would be a huge win? Who can take that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's great. That's exactly the win that's available here. So the organic material that's placed in a landfill decomposes anaerobically, and one of the byproducts is methane, and it is horrible for the greenhouse gas. That's one of the huge benefits of the Gore facility, is it's an engineered decomposition process where oxygen is added. With the addition of oxygen, methane is not produced. It's an aerobic decomposition, so the methane is not a resultant product.
Perfect. That's exactly what I thought. It's exactly the answer I wanted to hear. And that is why, gentlemen, that I personally support this facility, because we can't move fast enough to get methane gas out of that landfill. I know that you capture some of it, but actually the capture rate is not very high. And this will help that problem. Okay, are there any further questions from members of council? Seeing none, this is a public meeting, so I have to go through the process here. Is there anyone in attendance that would like to speak in support of the application? And we will note that Diana, Mike Lord, and James are here, and they certainly are here on behalf of the applicant. Is there anyone in attendance that would like to speak in opposition to the application or to seek further information? Again, I'm seeing no one, and we have to go through this process. So with that, I thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending tonight and providing the information. With that, I think the recommendation then is clear, that's on the report, that council defer any decision, and that we, at this particular time, adjourn the public meeting. I'm seeing Deputy Mayor with their hands up, and Councillor Howie second that. Call the vote. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Heather, does that cover everything we need? Perfect. Okay. So we will give ourselves a moment now to get back into the screen for our regular council meeting, but the public meeting is now adjourned. Thank you. Okay, good. And I see with the click of a button, Councillor Powers has joined us again. I love this technology. Okay, Heather, are we okay to proceed then? Okay, thank you. So ladies and gentlemen, we'll call our regular council meeting to order now at exactly 6:31. Before we start, I would like to ask council to join me in a moment of silence. It is with great shock and sadness that I inform OSM staff, team members, and council of the sudden passing of longtime Public Works employee George Downs last week. George joined OSM Township in 2003 and has been a valued member of the Public Works staff team for 19 years. George loved being in his OSM tandem truck, whether it be plowing snow or hauling gravel for construction projects. And if you knew George, you knew him to be a soft-spoken man. He always had a smile and kind words for everyone he interacted with. Attributes, folks, that we could, will so surely miss with George not being there, and the world would be better served if there was more of that. George is survived by his sister Marie and his son Stephen. Right now, of course, our thoughts and prayers are with them. We offer our deepest condolences. And please join me for a moment of silence in recognition of George Downs. Thank you very much. Okay, we will start off our council meeting as become our custom with the reading of the land recognition. And tonight, Deputy Mayor Clark will read that for us. Go ahead, Bonnie.
Before I start, I would like to say miigwech to Mayor Taylor for giving the honor of each member of council in reading our land recognition. So thank you, Mayor Taylor, for being inclusive. I have no further ado, I will start. We would like to begin by acknowledging the township of Otonabee-South Monaghan is located on the traditional treaty of the Mississauga peoples. These are Treaty 20 and Williams Treaties lands. We encourage everyone to educate themselves on the details of these documents and the influence of First Nations in Canada's history. The Council of Otonabee-South Monaghan recognizes these contributions and commit to actions which demonstrate respect for the environment and in keeping with First Nation tradition, reflects the security of the next 7 generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Okay, moving down the agenda, number 3 is announcements. I guess it is with a great deal of pleasure that I announce that our community center and our municipal office are now open to the public. They are, of course, subject to a few provincial restrictions, but we are open. The doors are open to the public, and we're getting closer to that word called normal that we are all striving to see. Okay, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest with any of the matters before us this evening? Seeing none. We have the agenda before you. Does any member of council have an addition or deletion from this agenda? Again, seeing none, I'd like a motion, please, to adopt this agenda for tonight's meeting. Councillor Howie and Councillor Powers, all in favor? Carry. That will be the agenda that we follow. Okay, council, we have 3 sets of minutes here. We have the regular council meeting minutes of January the 10th. We have the special closed session meeting minutes of Jan 17th and the regular council meeting minutes of Jan 24th. Are there any questions or comments to staff on these minutes? Seeing none, could I get a motion, please, that we adopt these minutes? Councillor Allen and Deputy Mayor Clark, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Okay, we're moving down now to delegations, and I see we have Alan and Linda Slavin waiting for to make the delegation for us tonight. I will remind the delegates that we allow 10 minutes for the presentation, and then afterwards, of course, we'll open it up to questions from members of council. So Alan and Linda, thank you very much for appearing before us tonight virtually. Technology can be a bit of a challenge, but we'll get through it. And I'll turn it over to you, and we'll look forward to the presentation.
So I think it's best if the presentation is run from your end. Well, no, that's okay. That's the way you've got it set up. That's great. Okay. So yeah, so can I go through the slides with these? Let me just check whether that works for me. No, okay, so if you can advance to the next slide. Okay, so first let me introduce who we are. We're all from the organization For Our Grandchildren. My name is Alan Slavin, and I and my wife Linda have lived in Otonabee-South Mulligan Township, actually in the same house for 47 years. So we're very, very much part of the community. Also joining us tonight is Doug Mason, who's lived in Havelock, Belmont, Methuen for the last 25 years. And he's in the excuse me, in the Twin Lakes area. So next slide, please. And Doug's going to handle it.
Okay. Yes, hello, and thanks for having us. And I apologize, I'm not trying to hide away, but for some reason I'm not getting my camera working. But yeah, we're here from the group known as For Our Grandchildren. We are a very strong local climate change action group working with citizens and governments to do three things. We want to inform, inspire, and motivate for climate-friendly action. And because of that, we're here today because we know that municipalities like yours, like all of the townships, municipalities worldwide are making the biggest contributions to reducing carbon emissions. We seem to be closest to the problem and closest to the solution. So as the group For Our Grandchildren, we gather together regularly, monthly often, to have these conversations within the community that will inspire, that will inform, inspire, and motivate. And I'd just like to draw your attention to two recent topics that we covered. We invited, and these topics will be discussed in more detail later on in this presentation, but we invited Pat Learmonth to come to talk to us about regenerative farming and how protecting the soil can help us with climate change. We also had a presentation about home retrofits and how this can empower the homeowner to not wait for somebody else, but to do it themselves, whether that's improving the insulation or even perhaps looking for a different fuel source. And so, as I say, Al will speak more to these later on.
So the slide on the left looks at the climate change action plan, which the township of Otonabee-South Mulligan passed in 2016. You are members of the Partners for Climate Protection, which is an organization which tries to encourage and helps municipalities across the country develop action plans for climate. And in 2016, you passed the first three milestones, which were to create a baseline emissions inventory, to set emissions reduction targets, develop a local action plan, and your local action plan committed you to reduce greenhouse gas emissions 25% by 2031. Milestones 4 and 5 are implementing the local action plan and monitoring the progress and reporting results. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Next slide, please. So the progress on your climate plan, if you've already said you've completed milestones 1, 2, and 3, at that time, the inventory showed that corporate emissions, that is the actual ones under direct municipal control, were 499 tons of CO2 per year. CO2 is carbon dioxide, the main greenhouse gas. Community emissions were much, much more than that. They are over 99% of the total emissions. So this presentation really focuses on the community emissions. We know that you're doing what you can in terms of the corporate ones. You're already at, your corporate missions are already on milestone 5, which means it's well under implementation in your reporting. And the community missions to time milestone 4 is you're still implementing those. Congratulations. This is one of the best township reports in the county. Your CAO, Mr. Border, has caught us up somewhat to date, but we must realize the standards have changed. The federal government now has committed to an emission target 45% reduction by 2030. Next slide, please. So one of the things we want to talk about briefly is the Climate Caucus. The Climate Caucus is another FCM, Federation of Canadian Municipalities program, and it's a network of 400 local elected climate leaders. And they get together about 1 hour a month for sharing best practices on both carbon emissions and preparing for the climate change that we can't avoid. Next slide, please.
So here are the 3 requests that 4 grandchildren would like to put to Otonabee-South Monaghan. As Al has just introduced you to the Climate Caucus, we would really appreciate having a township staff or council join that Climate Caucus to share best practices. And as Al pointed out, we're really looking at about 1 hour a month to touch base with some like-minded people. The second request we have, let's empower our local citizens. Let's form a joint Citizens Council Climate Emergency Task Force to identify the next steps in milestone 5. Let's have that task force develop clear actions to take your township to that 45% reduction in carbon usage by 2030. So 45%, as Al mentioned, is Canada's current target, and it's the reduction that we need to keep our temperature increase to 1.5 degrees or less. And we'd also ask you to work or to continue working at the county level to find best practices by other township councils. And then number 3, we'd like you to, as for our grandchildren wants to inform, we'd ask you to educate your citizens about what they can do. And we'll discuss that a little bit below in the next slide. Okay, so here we are. Here's a little information flyer, I guess, that For Our Grandchildren has put together, and we offer it up here now as something that perhaps you would like the way it is or reworded for your particular preferences, and perhaps then mail it out to your citizens through along with the tax bill. That's one way of informing, inspiring, and motivating, we think. Next slide. So we're speaking to you today because we know that you are influential people, whether it's in your private life or especially as council. You can influence others and can support these ideas, especially for the rural areas. Encouraging implementation of the following 2 ideas that we've already touched on can go a long way to reducing the carbon emissions for the township. So Al will speak to you a little bit more about the regenerative agriculture. It's already fairly common in the county. I think within OSM, one farm that I'm aware of is Harley's farm on the Keene Road. They practice regenerative agriculture. And also the reduction of carbon emissions from homes, the 3rd largest source of emissions in Canada, mostly from heating and cooling. Al will speak to these in the next slides.
Alan, just before you start, I just want to give you a heads up. There's a couple of minutes left, so I know you've got 5 more slides to wrap up if you can in a couple of minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Okay. Regenerative farming, you've already got people in the community that can tell you lots about it. Basically, it improves the soil, improves water retention, and that kind of thing. Some farmers are doing it, but only probably 10% of the county is what we've been told. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk very briefly about retrofitting homes. The purpose of this slide is in the lower right-hand corner is an air source heat pump, which is an alternative way of heating houses, which is much more energy efficient. Next slide, please. So retrofitting homes is the best thing that people can do, normal people can do in the township. There are federal incentives at $600 towards an energy audit, that explains what to the homeowner, what can happen, and up to $5,000 to improve insulation and draft proofing, which reduces energy use, or for example, add an air source heat pump to replace heating oil and propane. Several studies have been done to show that the payback is about 5 years, and then people are earning more money. I mentioned that Ontario is installing gas hookups in rural areas, paying $25,000, $26,000 each, and they're going to have to be removed in about 10 years. We really should go to subsidize heat pumps instead. Next slide, please.
So here's the summary of the requests we have for you. Please join that climate caucus, national working group on the climate crisis by and for municipal leaders. Form that joint Citizens Council Climate Emergency Task Force. Work on Milestone 5 both locally and at the county level. Educate your citizens with that mail out that we had the example of. Influence farmers and homeowners regarding regenerative agriculture and reduction of carbon emissions from buildings. And listen to youth, perhaps even invite them onto that task force. It's their future and our future. Okay, our final cartoon listing all the things that we've heard about for years of things that we have to do. But waiting for somebody else to be the leader in this. So we encourage you now to help your citizens be each one of those people as individual leaders in this climate change action. And the last slide. Thank you very much for your attention. How can we help you in your work for Milestone 5? 4RG would very much appreciate a written response from Otonabee-South Monaghan to these requests. We thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much to the delegates. A good presentation and a pretty good job of clock management. It's a lot of material to go through. Before I turn it over to questions from members of council, what I'd like to do is ask our CAO, Greg Bordas, to please provide for our information, really, just provide us with an update, Greg, and some of the initiatives that Otonabee-South Monaghan has done maybe over the last year with regards to our climate change action plan.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. As was mentioned, we do report and report annually back into Sustainability Peterborough as far as our actions are concerned, and I've shared those particular that information with the presenters. But we've, in order to get us to Milestone 5, we've really taken on some fairly significant projects to try to reduce our environmental footprint. Certainly the 2021 was the first year of our Clear Bag program. So we're trying to reduce those, the actual contributions that go into the landfill, and certainly save that particular facility, but also save through the additional materials going into the landfill, the production of methane gas. We've also taken some actions where we have done a retrofit program, utilizing a funding source from the province and the federal government to do an upgrade and change all of our lighting systems in all of our municipal buildings to LED. And so we've, council would know that from those first two initiatives based on our capital budgets that we've been doing. A third thing that we did is that, a few years ago, we did an upgrade to, which was one of our largest energy users, which was the Otonabee Memorial Community Center. So with the new ice chilling system and the new electric motors, and in that particular facility dramatically reduced our energy footprint. But at the same time, we added that in 2021. Council is aware, we replaced two of the dehumidification units in that facility so that they run a little bit more lean and as well with less energy. So those are three big items that we are quite pleased about. We are obligated under the Ministry of Energy regulations We also have to report all of our utility usage annually to the Ministry of Energy. So we are obligated under regulation to do that. So we can track our progress, and so those gives you, that will give you an example of some of the things that we have been doing specifically. And then as far as communications are concerned, we try to get that message out through our social media platform as well. So if there's any questions, Mr. Mayor, I'd certainly be pleased to answer those.
Thank you very much, Craig. And I'll just open it up now to questions from members of council, either of course to our CAO or to Alan, Linda, or Doug. Any members of council got any questions? Councillor Powers, go ahead, Nick.
Thanks, Mayor Taylor. Alan, Linda, Doug, thanks so much. Really good presentation. Lots of really good information. Just a couple of questions around the, I think first and foremost, those 4 requests to the township, I think are quite reasonable and make sense from my perspective that we would seriously look at undertaking each of those. I'm curious from the Citizen Council Climate Task perspective, are other townships undertaking this similar approach? Is there a county-wide emergency task climate force that you're aware of, or is it being developed at the individual municipal level? How have you seen this being used elsewhere?
It really depends on the individual municipality. I've been sitting in on some of the climate caucus meetings that I'm not a councillor, so I can't attend them all. But it's quite obvious that in some municipalities across the country, there's very active citizen council cooperation. What it does is it allows councillors to take to this committee problems that they've got or ideas they might have, and then they've got people in the community who are really concerned about it, very much involved, very knowledgeable, who can feed back information. Just if I can give a very simple example, I talked to Joe Taylor not too long ago about the idea of reducing energy with forming ice in an arena, and I was able to send him a report from another community that's actually installed a machine that does that reduces energy dramatically. So there's a case where you've got citizen councillor interaction that can bring more knowledge to the table than councillors have time to amass by themselves.
Right. Yeah, excellent. I think it's a wonderful idea. And so I'm certainly in support of moving through some of these initiatives. Certainly the climate caucus, from all the research that I've undertaken, it seems pretty straightforward that we can have a conversation and identify an appropriate individual or role within our community and our township to participate in that. And so I think that's certainly, I think the climate task force probably requires a little bit more discussion as to how that would be implemented if we wanted to move forward. But I think that certainly makes sense that we could implement something like that. So again, thanks so much for the presentation. Really good information.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Powers. I believe there were other hands up. Councillor Howie, did you have your hand up? No? Deputy Mayor Clark, go ahead, Bonnie. Okay, and then
yeah.
Councillor Allen.
Okay, thank you through the mayor, and thank you. Certainly a wonderful presentation and something we should all be concerned about. I would suggest that you do this presentation. The county does have a climate action plan task force, and I think that should go to that committee for the county. The other thing, the regen that Pat Learmouth spoke on, I do have that link, and I'm wondering if that could be sent to the township. I would like to see it posted, the links for these different things that you have here on our township website as well, to engage people that are going in on the website. I think that's the important thing. And question, have you spoke at any of the schools as well? You talk about the young people, they are our future, and engaging them. Have you reached out now that we're Zoom? I mean, they're all used to Zoom education. Have you thought about the science classes and reaching out there?
definitely that is being done. I mean, there's some
Great.
very active teachers in the community who are doing a lot of that work. And there's a very active student group, student groups who are very concerned about climate change. People in For Our Grandchildren have made presentations when the board has PA days, for example, to try to, help teachers gain more information that they can use. So we're doing some of that. We're always happy to be invited.
Okay, and just a follow up and maybe more to staff. I was in at PKED when Duro Dummer made the announcement, and we looked at the slides here and how much comes from houses and individual homes. Can we ask staff to reach out to Duro Dummer? I would like to know the uptake on those incentives that they have there, and that's something maybe that could come back to OSM, but I'd like to just have a report back if you could reach out and see how that is working. So anyway, I'm in support as well. Councillor Powers has said I'm full support as well. We need to keep moving on this.
So I think Deputy Mayor, at the end of the questions, we'll be looking for a motion, and any of these suggestions that are coming from council should be captured in the motion.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councillor Allen, you had your hand up, Mark?
Sure, it's a different council to have worked on it.
Should have asked Joe.
Mark, it doesn't look like you're muted, but we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? No?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I have to start all over again. Well, thank you. Thanks, Al and Linda and Doug, for the presentation. And I do appreciate that. It's quite full. And I do think my question probably has been captured now by both Councillor Powers and Deputy Mayor Clark. But I was asking if there's any initiative, because, through the report, you see that obviously it's the households and the residents themselves that can make the largest impact on this. And I didn't know if you had any sort of, I was going to call it a power user or power township that has engaged with their residents and created something like further to what you're even suggesting, and a champion in this. And perhaps Deputy Mayor Clark has suggested that some of that we might find at our neighbors to the north in Duro Dummer. So that may come along with that. I can leave it open if there's any suggestions as to where we might look for something of advanced engagement with our residents.
I can comment. I don't know of any township in Peterborough County that's been pushing the retrofit proposals at the moment. I think it's something that Selwyn's considering. There's an enormous amount of activity in British Columbia. And in fact, the province itself has been very supportive. I mean, the province, if I remember correctly, offers $7,500 towards installing heat pumps when they're replacing heating oil or propane, which are much more polluting, more polluting than even the natural gas, and actually much more expensive. It actually is economically to the advantage of the homeowner to put in a heat pump and get rid of heating oil or propane in this province. But as I say, British Columbia is really working hard in that area and has got a substantial incentive for homes that do that, larger than the federal one. And that's in addition to the federal one.
There are a couple of Ontario townships as well that have done exceptional work. And I think you'd best access them through the Climate Caucus.
Yeah, Halton Hills is one that comes to mind. I don't remember exactly what they've done, but they're really held up as being leaders in this area.
Okay, thank you. We've got to Councillor Howie with a question up, and then we are going to have to wrap it up and move on. So we'll move over to Councillor Howie now. Go ahead, Ken.
Yep, very good report. Thanks. That is our future that is coming up, and we all have to be concerned about it. But one of the things I've noticed that seems to have dropped off is solar. It's out there. It's free, energy. I like to really see that they start doing more investments into the solar and more research, because I think they can do a lot better with it as well.
So I can comment very briefly. Ontario, in the previous government, did have this microfit program, and that sponsored a lot of the solar development that was there at the time. And we actually we've got a solar panels on a shed at our place. But with the current government, that incentive was done away with. There's no question, but it's absolutely essential. In order to electrify cars and electrify houses, we have to increase the size of our electricity production in this country by somewhere between 2 and 3-fold. It's at least 2-fold. And a lot of that has to be solar. Solar and wind. Wind is also a very big one, of course. So I wouldn't say it's dropped off the radar. It's dropped off the radar in this province, but in other provinces, including Alberta, actually. Alberta, I think, has the largest solar installation in the country now.
And they got wind farms too.
And just as a follow-up on that one, I think what happened before is hydro solar was created as a revenue. And I think we need to create it as for our needs rather than revenue.
I think there's no question, but we cannot reach the Canadian, there is no question. We cannot reach Canadian targets without generating a lot more renewable energy than we already have. So we really have to exploit both solar and wind and hydroelectric power where it's available.
Okay, before I wrap it up, I've got a question for our chief building official. I see Ken Curry is here. Ken, there's been some very interesting information about the benefits of air source heat pumps and other incentives that a new homeowner might consider when they're building a house. When an applicant comes into your office to get a building permit for a new home, is there an information package that's provided to them with some of the benefits and some considerations they might give to building a more environmentally friendly home? What do we do now? Muted, Ken. Muted.
Currently, our building package does not speak to energy conservation or anything else, because usually by the time they get to us, they've already made the decisions about what they're doing. And the building code in and of itself doesn't speak to any of that energy conservation thing other than through insulation values. Should there be a movement towards heat pumps? Absolutely. I'm a big fan. I own one myself. The payback's 3 to 1. There's no argument. Having said that, and it was alluded to, our current energy system, meaning our electrical system, would have to change 2, 3, or 4-fold in order to supply all of the electricity that it would take if everybody switched over to heat pumps tomorrow. And that's not going to happen anytime soon, because as you know, municipalities just don't have the money for that. The electrical sources don't have the money for it. And the end result is that somebody's got to pay for it. And that's going to be you and me when we get our electrical bill every month. So it's a catch-22. You get really good energy return, but you got to pay for it somewhere else.
So perhaps there could be some thought given to that within the building department about information that could be provided that might encourage folks to at least consider that.
It was a discussion.
And I'll just leave it at that. What I'm looking for now is a motion from council with some direction. Is any member of council prepared to put forth a motion for consideration? And I will say, Linda and Alan and Doug, I thank you for noticing that Otonabee-South Monaghan is really one of the leaders in this area. You're going to find that this council takes this issue very seriously. We have a responsibility, and we understand that, and we do exactly what we can to fulfill that responsibility. So we've done a lot. We thank you very much. You're a resident of this township, so you keep our feet to the fire, and there's nothing wrong with that. But anyway, I appreciate what you do on behalf of my grandchildren and a whole lot of other grandchildren. So I certainly really do applaud you for what you're doing. So with that, I'm looking for a motion from council. How are we going to proceed with this? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Certainly, I would like to make a motion that we are supportive of the requests that have been brought forward to us. I would like to staff to bring us back a report on how to proceed here and join the Climate Caucus group. Whether it is a staff member or council, I think we can take time to consider that. I would ask staff to give us a report, to seek out a report from Duro Dummer on the initiatives that they have put in place and the uptake. And I think Councillor Powers was going to make a motion. So I would you like to add anything to that, Councillor Powers?
Nick, you have any amendments to that motion?
I would, yes, if I could, I would just add have staff to come back with a report related to the council or citizen council task force and what that could or may look like if we wanted to proceed with that. And in addition, what, if any, policies or programs we could seriously start to look at when it comes to our building department or planning department or otherwise, that we could look at from a policy perspective or at least an education perspective moving forward.
We have to be careful. We have to be careful in the length of our motions here. Our poor old clerk is furiously writing this down.
So can we make it easy and just put it down that the motion is to receive the report and to ask staff to bring back recommendations surrounding the request by the group, and that to be inclusive of Duro Dummer's initiatives and whether there is uptake there, and also to look into engaging our community in this. And I would think that would be whether we get it out on our web and that, but leave that open and staff to bring back those recommendations.
That information would come back in the report.
Yes.
Okay, so Heather, are you okay with that motion? You've got the essence of it at least.
It kind of, as Mayor Taylor has asked, it puts it down, but staff knows what we're looking for and just how we can implement it.
It's scary. They know what we're thinking before we do. So
are you okay?
Do I have a seconder for that carefully worded motion? I see Councillor Powers' hand up. I'm going to call the vote. All in favor, please, of that motion. That is carried. Thank you very much, Council. Thank you very much to the delegations. And we'll look forward.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good night.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, Council, we're going to move down now to 12.1, which is a report on the municipal modernization funding. And I think, Greg, you're going to lead the way in that one.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the report is relatively self-explanatory. We did come to council in October, applying for money under this third phase or third intake for the municipal modernization funding. And we looked at focusing on one of their particular items, which is digital modernization. So we're again giving an update to council that our submission had been approved. And one of the things that we need to do is in the bylaw section tonight is we have a copy of the agreement that we need to sign and get back this week to the province so that they can approve it and make and provide us with a contribution based on the contribution agreement that would come back to us as far as funding is concerned. So if there's any questions, Mr. Mayor, I'd certainly be pleased to answer them.
Thank you. Great questions. Councillor Powers, go ahead.
Yeah, this is obviously wonderful news, and anytime we can implement these types of programs and do it at a reduced cost to the township and the taxpayers is certainly a benefit. One question, Greg, I wasn't clear the deadline for implementation or reporting back on each of these individual projects, what the expectation is as it relates to that. If you could speak to that, please.
Councillor, Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Powers, I believe in the agreement that is before council in the bylaw section, it sets the dates that we have to, the milestone dates that we have to get back and report back to the government as far, and I believe, just off the top of my head, I don't have it open here, but I believe we have to have items completed in the 2023-2024 fiscal year is the time frame. So we do have a little bit of time to do this, but when we go through the bylaw, we can maybe take a look at that. But there are specific guidelines, so we don't have to get it done in this calendar year. There is some time for us to undertake these initiatives.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, staff, on this one? If not, this really is just to receive for information purposes. See Deputy Mayor Clark is willing to move that, and Councillor Allen will second it. All in favor? Sorry, was there a question?
No, that's fine. I was just going to say and support the bylaw.
But the bylaw will come later,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor, we'll call the vote again. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, moving down now to the electronic permitting pilot project for OSM. And I don't know whether this is going to be Ken or Greg, or there'll be a tag team on this one. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's going to be a bit of a tag team here. So this is actually, one of the questions that Councilor Power just asked, is when are we going to get going? So we've been working on our e-permitting initiative for the last couple of years. And this report details that. I'll just sort of speak to the process. If you have any questions specifically about cloud permits and the software and everything, Ken is knowledgeable about that particular program. So we were looking at this particular e-permitting process and program had been branded a couple of years ago by the name eVolta. And so been looking at this, and several of the local townships have started this process of e-permitting. So there was a branding change to cloud permits. And so I was made aware of an initiative coming out of the Association of Municipalities of Ontario around an e-permitting pilot project to encourage municipalities to do this. And as council is aware, we've had some of this money in our capital budget for about the last 15 months. And so we've been waiting for this in eager anticipation for this particular item to come forward from AMO and for the pilot project to come forward. So they've taken the cloud permit software, or what they've done is they've gone out to a request for proposal from various vendors about what is the best solution, electronic permitting solution, and they've chosen cloud permits. So they've done the vendor identification already. And they also partnered with the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation. And so that they've created a link between MPAC and as well this e-permitting system. So when we generate a permit, we have to send information to MPAC about the nature of that permit and the value and such, and then they do an update on the assessment roll. So we've kind of hit the sort of a three-part jackpot here. Is that we're getting funding from the province of up to 75% to do this particular project. We have an opportunity to join the pilot project and with this particular vendor and get this enhanced software program. And we also get a bit of a RFP issued advantage where we, in the first year, we would pay 50% of the cost of our annual cost. And so we would get, so if you do the math, we get 75% of the 50% from the province. And then in the second year, that we would get 75% of the total cost that we would pay. So we're really excited about going to do this. One of the items that is required under us to be put forward as a pilot project is we need a resolution of the council. And so this has already been in our capital budget. We've sent our expression of interest in. So we wanted to come here tonight and have council pass and endorse this as a resolution. And so we can start this particular project and process right out of the gate here. So if there's any questions, we'd certainly be pleased to answer. I know that Ken also has specific questions if you have around this particular e-permitting solution. So, Mr. Mayor, I turn it back to you.
Thank you, Greg. I saw Councillor Howie's hand up. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah,
Howie?
through the mayor. Yeah, Greg, it sounds like this is something that's going to be really good for our future, and it's going to save a lot of time, I think, for staff and everything. But one of the concerns I have is that some of our residents maybe that don't have internet or aren't great with internet. Is there going to be something that, you know, they can come into the office and have someone go with them and help them?
I'll turn it over to Ken here, but we're not getting out of the process of having paper permits. Okay, so we're not going to full electronic. So then if they do come into the office, they could be guided through an application process online, or they can sort of provide us with permits. So our goal is to try to get to electronic, but Ken, I know that you've had been dealing with this before. Maybe you could comment on it.
Okay, so in my own private life, I've had more than a few opportunities to deal with this software, and by and large, it's a good thing, especially for people who live at distance from the municipality, whether it's from an applicant who owns property or whether it's somebody as an agent acting on their behalf. I know in my own self, for example, if I've got to make an application in Trent Lakes, it saves me a 2.5-hour round trip, and that's enormous. It takes a little bit longer to get through the process in terms of making the application than it would if you were doing it as a paper application, but I think it's all relative. And the benefits far outweigh any of the little idiosyncrasies that might be involved. And there's a couple of tweaks that might or should be done, but of course, when you're on the processing side or presenting side, you don't have the opportunity to speak to those people. So we'll have that opportunity as part of the project, so I've been assured. I think it's all good. I can't think of a better way to move forward. The possibility of people who don't have the electronic stuff, by and large, those people aren't actually doing permits themselves anymore. They're hiring somebody like me in my private practice to do it for them. There is the odd individual who still likes to do all their own stuff. So yes, they could come to the office and make their application there. It means that somebody's going to have to put it in the system for them at our end, but I'm not seeing any downside to this. And that's about as simple as it gets.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Very good. Deputy Mayor, go ahead, Bonnie.
Yes, through the mayor. So certainly, you know, we're all stepping ahead and this is modernization. So we want that. I'm glad to hear the hard copy for those that are begrudgingly being pulled into the 21st century. So that is fantastic. We've always talked about planning, paying for planning. So this is great, the 75% and then the 50%. At the end of the day, certainly if it saves staff time, we've got that and more permits pushed out. So I see that cost savings. What kind of dollars are we looking at the end of the day, or anticipating that we will be paying going forward after the I'll call it the transitional period?
Mr. Mayor, I can speak through that to the deputy. So in the first calendar year, okay, we pay 50% of we're charged 50% of the annual fee, of which 75% of that is eligible for us from the province. So the 50% of the annual fee is approximately $10,000 a year. In the second year, we would be eligible to receive 75% of the 100% fee. And so in that particular year, the fee is just under $20,000 a year. So we would pay, we would get about $15,000 back and pay about $5,000. So in that third year, when we're on our own, we would pay approximately $20,000 per year, and that's the licensing fee, the using fee, and that sort of type of stuff. So I think it is it's not outrageous, and I think it's a good platform for us. And as you said, would save some time. We're looking at, being able to do drawing. Ken can talk a little bit about this drawing and technical review, doing them electronically and getting them back. They'll have tablets on the work sites when they do their inspections. People can book inspections electronically through that particular system as well. So there's a whole bunch of, I guess, productivity advances and for the money, which I don't think is outrageous.
Okay, if just in context then, Greg, just a follow up to that. So if certainly there's the link to impact, so new growth, we're going to pick those dollars up and not miss anything there. So that's an advantage for our income for the municipality. If we can put more out, again, do you see this? I'm trying to think what our planning budget is in total. I should have called and asked for that. Do you see this as basically a wash? The 20,000 will be a wash because of productivity, an increase in revenue, getting the changes into impact faster.
Mr. Mayor, I see that again, specifically what you state, and it's our building budget, not our planning budget. So it's building.
Oh yes, sorry, I keep.
Okay, so
yeah.
so if you recall that our building budget is fully funded by fees.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not. There's no impact on the municipal taxpayer because it's fully funded by fees. So and so in this particular case, this particular amount can be fully funded through the fees, and then of course our tax base wins because of the increased level of assessment.
So the fees you do not see going up then?
Well, we would, Mr. Mayor, I would never say that our fees are not going to go up because we want to make sure that they go up by inflation. And so we would be coming back to you to talk about how do we manage this particular process from a revenue perspective, which I think is another conversation. But I don't anticipate this being a significant drag on the building department budget. I think is where you're going.
That's the question, and certainly yes, and I get inflation and wages go up, etc. I just don't want to see it wildly grow up because of this impact. So thank you for that reassurance.
Okay, I'm going to let Councillor Powers have the last question, then we're going to be looking for a motion from council. Go ahead, Nick.
Thanks, Mayor Taylor. Yes, first and foremost, I think this is both logical, practical, and economical, I'll say. And it is the reality of the world we live in, that things are moving particularly to an online platform, a cloud-based platform. You're going to see more and more services, if not all services in general, that interact with, in some capacity, with a document with residents will eventually move to something similar to this in the near future. So this is not surprising. I think it's actually a really good positive piece. Couple of questions for Greg. I put my sort of cybersecurity hat on. I'm assuming, I'm making a bit of an assumption here because there's not a lot of information. I did some digging, but I'm assuming that AMO and MISA, as part of the RFP process, thoroughly investigated the cybersecurity components of this, because obviously there's quite a few that stick out to me, i.e. they're uploading documents. Who knows what those documents are? There's information that's going to be stored as per the resident's information. How is that being stored? All that information. But I'm assuming from what I've read that Cloud Permit's a pretty large organization. This is not a small mom and pop shop. So I'm going to make an assumption a little bit there, and then I just have one other question. So if you can just maybe comment on anything you may be aware of.
Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Powers, yes, I believe that those, so in the evaluation team, as you spoke of, there was the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, there was the Municipal Information officers or MISA that were a part of this particular process. I believe the municipal financial, and I'm trying to get the acronym here, but it's the Municipal Financial Officers Association. And as well, the Ontario Building Officials Association have been involved in this particular aspect. So in the RFP, they had to provide details on how the cloud service was going to be handled, how the storage was going to be handled, what criteria were in place. So that was done as a criteria in the RFP process, of which this particular vendor had met those specs.
Okay, all right, great, thank you. The last question I have is really around the agreement. So who is the agreement with? Are we signing an agreement with Cloud Permit, or is AMO signing it on our behalf? How does that work? And then is the agreement that we're signing, is it simply for the pilot program, and then a new agreement will be presented to council for a long-term commitment? Because there's a couple of things that come to mind as it relates to the agreement. One is, we're only committing ourselves to the pilot program, and then we'll reassess at the end. Is there a back out if it's not working for us? I just want to make sure that we're not getting locked in.
I have not yet, Mr. Mayor, to Council Powers, I've not yet seen the agreement piece of it as of yet. So when the agreement comes in, it'll be, of course, reviewed by our solicitor to make sure that agreement is appropriate before we start that particular process. Our agreement will be directly with Cloud Permit. Okay, so there, as the vendor, it's going to be a purchaser versus vendor agreement, and then there will be explicit criteria in there about termination and termination provisions, notice provisions, and that sort of type of thing. So we would review that and see. I have not seen. I do have a proposal that's in front of me. I don't have the information that talks about the length of the agreement, okay, as far as the quote is concerned. But we will be looking at that particular term and making sure that it's appropriate.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, council, they got to start pushing along here. I think in the interest of time, it would be adequate if I just simply ask for a motion to receive the report and approve the recommendations. There are a couple of them that are in the agenda. I hope council have seen that. And I think, Heather, that would cover it, wouldn't it? Just simply receive the report and approve the recommendations. Okay, Councillor Powers has moved it. Councillor Allen is second. Call the vote. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, moving down now to a staff report on proposed volunteer firefighter certification. And I see your new fire chief has been waiting patiently in the wings. Good evening, Chuck. What can you tell us about this particular issue? And it's not a new one.
It's not a new one. I believe Greg is going to present, and then and I'll be here for any questions, since this kind of dropped on me as soon as I walked in the door.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Fire Chief. So just a very, very quick introductory remark. So this, as Chief Parsons has advised, that this has sort of been dropped in our laps in here at the beginning of last week. And so much so that, Mr. Parsons started on the 1st of February. We're now on the 7th of February. So he's been on in the role less than 5 working days. So he was not in our council report writing portal. And so this is why the report was from me, but it was put together between the CAO, the deputy CAO clerk, the fire chief, and the deputy fire chief. Okay, so here it is. We wanted to bring this issue to your attention related to certification of volunteer firefighters. It's not something new. We gave you the information attached to the report when this item had come forward to council in 2018 previously. And so there are some items that are there, as I mentioned, around 3 things around the changes to the Fire Protection and Prevention Act. So council sets the level of service for fire services. So that's your responsibility. The Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs does not do that. They are an organization that is a fellowship organization of fire chiefs. And you know, these changes have come so quickly. And the regs just came out, I think, Chuck, last Thursday or Friday.
Friday we got them.
Friday we got them. So anyways, that's sort of, we wanted to get it on council's radar because we have to have comments in by February the 28th. And so and so that's why it's here. And we had been, you know, strong advocates. The former chief Brian was a really strong advocate on behalf of volunteer firefighters and the need to ensure that they can flourish. So if council has any questions around about, and we'll try to answer them about what we think we know related to the regulations. There's going to be some issues related to certification. There's going to be some issues related to operational efficiencies and operational standards that we have as far, and the fire chief can deal with that. If there's any questions around those particular pieces. So I'm going to turn it over to the fire chief here, and then he can have a conversation with you a little bit about some of those particular issues. Or Mr. Mayor, if council just wants to ask some specific questions related to this prior to the fire chief making some comments. So
well, Chuck, I'll ask you first. I am going to open it up for questions. Is there anything you'd like to supplement that CAO information?
Sure. Again, this was brought up in 2018. There was a large number of municipalities, specifically with volunteer firefighters, that wrote against the certification at that time. Let me start by saying that we support certification. We ensure our firefighters are certified. So it's not a matter that we don't want to be certified. But when you read the regulations, it really handcuffs the operations of the volunteer fire service. The regulations talk about certification specific to every single job. And it's written in such a way that a full-time department can man their operation with personnel that fit the specific requirements. But in a volunteer fire department, we don't know who's coming. We don't know the number that's coming, and we don't know exactly who's going to be coming. Now, a firefighter in this has 24 months to obtain their certification, but above a firefighter, there is no lead time to come in. So for example, it talks about a person in charge being an officer requiring a 1021 certification, which is an officer certification. But we can't guarantee that I have an officer on every truck because of our manning. It talks about one of the problems I see in here is anyone that teaches firefighters has to have what we call a 1041 or a fire instructor. Yet I have firefighters who have expertise in situations, you know, they may be electricians, they may be tradespeople, or they may be third party that would limit who can teach my firefighters and how they're educated. And, you know, it goes on from there, certification for public education, which means, you know, you show up, the family shows up at the fire hall, but because my firefighters aren't public ed certified, they can't even give a tour. So it really handcuffs operations, and the problem that we have is it seems to be ramrodded. You know, we got notice of it just before I arrived. The regulations didn't drop until Friday. They want comment by the 28th, and it seems like they're trying to rush it through legislature to try and push this in, and we know where it's coming from. So, but it will really affect our operations, and it also affects our budget when I have to turn around and say, well, I'm going to need more people certified in 1021 just to have an officer on a truck, or guaranteed officer on a truck, or that sort of item. So that reduces our operational ability, yet increases our budget for training, because we have to get a lot more trained to ensure that I have the right people in the seat.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. I will open up now to questions. I see Councillor Powers and then Deputy Mayor. We'll start off with those two. Go ahead, Nick.
Okay, thanks, Mayor Taylor. Yeah, Chuck, you hit on a couple of things that stood out to me as concerns. I definitely would be in support of certification in general. I mean, it seems logical that and Chuck, maybe you can speak to that certification process as it exists today. I'm making a bit of an assumption that there is a requirement that a volunteer firefighter has some minimum level of training to participate as a volunteer firefighter. And I don't know if that's called certification or not, but I suspect that there is some minimum level of training to participate.
Yes, through you, Mayor. At this point in time, technically there is no minimum level. It's set by the department, and the department sets the level of training. We've always participated in certification, which is an NFPA. It's been voluntary to certify, but most fire departments, at least even on the firefighter for liability purposes, takes certification. Ontario switched to NFPA a number of years ago. Prior to that, it was done at the provincial level, but it was only recognized in the province. We've now gone to the NFPA, which is international certification. So we've, on a liability side, have always certified our firefighters, and we encourage our officers and other levels to be certified. For example, I'm a level 4 certified officer, the highest level, because that's where I personally obtained to go to. And a lot of times we'll ask for that. But the problem that I get into is, even as, we have people that are senior firefighters that may not be officers yet, but I want to put them into that role so that I can see if they have the ability to do that, and through a watchful eye that they can do it, but also to find out whether they want to do that sort of role. Under the new certification, I wouldn't be able to do that. They have to be certified prior to doing that. Certification for a firefighter, with Norwood, we get them done in about a year to get them fully certified. But officers, require multiple weekends to get their certification down. Some of it's blended now, which is nice that I can do it online and then do, portion in. That's the reality. But it's still a large commitment into try and figure out who I have on a truck, through the day. Really handcuffs are the operations that we're doing.
Yeah, I would agree. And so just one last follow-up, Mayor Taylor, if I can, is just my concern that sticks out is, one, in reading the comments, even from the Q&A, the FAQ, and the other information from 2018, is there's a lot of clarity required around what exactly, who needs what and when. It just seems to be, I was just spinning in circles trying to figure out, okay, if I was before 2015, and then if I had this one, if I showed up here, would I be covered? It was very confusing, and I could see how it would get very frustrating very quickly for departments like ours trying to stick handle this whole certification process. And my fear is that the long term would be, if should this go through, is that we may have volunteer firefighters who decide, I'm not going to go through this. This is too much. I'm just doing this because I truly enjoy helping my community and participating in and I love being a firefighter, but this is over the top, and we may lose firefighters. That's my greatest fear. Anyway, just a comment. Thanks.
Through you, Your Worship. That's one aspect of it. My job as a chief and my officer's job is to keep my personnel safe, and I would never put them in a position where they were not safe or doing the job. But this really handcuffs where we're going. And like you said, I either will lose firefighters who say this is too much, or I won't get personnel to step up as leaders because they say it's too much. So that's the issue.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. We've got Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Howie. Go ahead, Bonnie.
Thank you, through the mayor. Just first of all, thank goodness I reached out to Chuck today, and we had a really thorough conversation around this, and he's right on top of this issue. And as the mayor has said, this is coming at us again. It's not new, bit of a different slant, but it's not new. So there's a couple of concerns. Certainly keeping our volunteers here. We don't know who's going to show up, and with all these demands, whether people's interests may wane. The other side of it is the liability, because if we have to meet these certifications and we can't, we're liable. And then we're not keeping our community safe. I see this as a real outreach from the firefighters union trying to push again for full-time firefighters. I think I can say that. Our fire chief likely can't. But I see that as, so you have that established education lineup in-house to address this. So this is being written, certainly not for volunteer fire fighting departments. This is for the big guys. And unfortunately, us little guys in rural Ontario are they're trying to eat us up. So that's all I'll say. Thank you, Chuck.
Councillor Howie, go ahead, Ken.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. And I'd just like to give you a bit of insight as from the other side, as being a volunteer firefighter before. I came through that period where I grandfathered into, being an officer and everything else, which, luckily for me, time-wise, the amount of time that a firefighter has to put in to get these certifications, okay, it's hard. And I'm glad I was grandfathered before. And I can see us not having people coming out or even signing up, knowing how much they're going to have to do to get certified. They want to get certified on their own time, whether it's going to take 1 year, 2 years, and be able to do what they can do. So I find it's going to be very critical about the amount of people that we're going to have volunteering to become members of the fire department.
Through
Thank you.
your worship, if I can,
Sure.
the new regulations too don't address grandfathering in such a way that they've done it before. What they have addressed in the regs that if I feel someone within a certain period, I can write a letter to the fire marshal's office explaining his or her training experience, and then the fire marshal's office will address that letter. So they've made it very daunting on this round.
So council, I think everybody understands the seriousness of this. My understanding is that while this will affect, if it goes forward, it will affect the Otonabee-South Monaghan emergency firefighting services for sure. It won't affect us as much as it will some other of the smaller volunteer departments, because we already have some levels of certification because we feel we should. And council has set the level of standard a number of years ago, and that level of certification is required to maintain it. But it certainly is potentially a very serious issue for all rural volunteer firefighting departments, and certainly we're no exception. So what we're looking for from council is authorization for this township to write a letter to the Ministry of the Solicitor General and the President of the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs, expressing our concerns. And hopefully, I'm sure that there's going to be, Chuck, this is going to be piggybacked with all the rural volunteer fire departments, this initiative. Okay, so I'm seeing Deputy Mayor Clark, are you willing to make that motion? And
Yes.
Councillor Allen is seconded. Okay.
Mayor Taylor, would it be of any value to send it to all our other municipalities and county council as well?
I think every township is going to be doing the same thing.
Okay.
Is that?
Mr. Mayor, I could speak to that. So we have this has already been sent to the CAOs at the request of our fire chiefs. We are slated to have a combined meeting of CAOs at the end of this week. And I know, Chuck, maybe you could talk about your meeting with your fire chiefs, but it's our goal to have a similar type of action happen at all of the Peterborough County townships. So Chuck, I know you're going to be meeting with the fire chiefs, right?
Okay, before you do that, Chuck, I just want to ask the clerk, Heather, Deputy Mayor Clark has put the motion on the floor. Has it been seconded yet?
Councillor Allen.
Councillor
Yes.
Allen seconded. Okay, before we go any further, I guess if you have questions related to the motion, that's where it would come in here. So Deputy Mayor, you've made a question related to the motion about circulation, correct?
Correct. And it sounds, I'm thinking all the municipalities with that information are doing it, Mayor Taylor. And
So we'll let Chuck answer the question. Okay, go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah, I have a meeting tomorrow with the county fire chiefs that I'll bring this up to county fire chiefs, and CAO has asked for a representative to talk to the CAOs. So, but I'm sure this is going to be a province-wide move as well. I can see rumblings in the south as well, I know of. So again, it's well known. This isn't something that they're hiding.
Any further questions speaking to the motion? Let me ask, once this letter is drafted, can council be provided with a copy of it? Okay, we can be included perhaps with the correspondence at our next meeting, something like that.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we could do whatever council wishes. We will do a draft of the letter for the mayor's signature, and then it will be provided. It can be provided on the next agenda for this particular council.
Okay, speaking to the motion, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
yes, and will it be copied to our MPP?
I can answer that. I'm going to personally advise MP Piccini that a letter is coming. I don't want to surprise him with it.
Thank
But
you.
yes, it absolutely will. Yeah. Okay, so that's the motions on the floor, authorizing the staff to write a letter. I'll sign it. You'll all see a copy of it at our next meeting. All in favor of the motion? That is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Chuck. Okay, moving down now to bylaws, council, and we have, I think, 4. Can I get a motion, please, that bylaws 2022-09, 10, 11, and 12 be read a first time? Howie and Powers, all in favor? Carried. I'll ask the clerk to review the bylaws, please.
2022-09 is your council, your confirming bylaw for January 10th, 17th, and 24th meetings. 2022-10 is the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Municipal Modernization Program, intake 3. And I can just answer your question with respect to the reporting period. So the interim report is to be back by May 30th, 2022. The final report is to be back by February 28th, 2023. And the annual report is to be back by February the 28th, 2024. Bylaw 2022-11 is the council, your use of corporate resources during an election. And 2022-12 is the election sign bylaw.
Very good, thank you. Any questions to the clerk on any of these bylaws? And Heather did provide us advanced copies of the bylaws regarding around the election. So if you had any questions on that, I hope that you notified her in advance. Are there any questions from members of council, any of us? Seeing none, could I get a motion, please, that bylaws 2022-09, 10, 11, and 12 be read a second and third time, signed, sealed, and the corporate seal attached? I am seeing Councillor Allen and Councillor Powers. All in favor? They are carried. Bylaws are passed. Thank you. Okay, moving down now to correspondence. There are 2 pieces from the city of Brantford. And the first, they're really, I think, dealing with the same issue. How would council like to handle the first one? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Receive.
Motion to receive from Deputy Mayor Clark and seconded by Councillor Powers. Any discussion? We'll call the vote. All in favor? Received. The second one, City of Brantford, the revolving door of justice. Deputy Mayor?
I would lump them both into one, both to receive.
We'll have 2 motions separate, but receive,
Yeah.
receive, okay. Any second by Councillor Howie? All in favor? They are received. Thank you. Okay, we have nothing under information, nothing that I'm aware of under other matters, nothing for closed session. Just need one further motion. Allen and Howie, Councillor Allen and Councillor Howie have moved to adjourn. All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much, Council. Good meeting, good discussion on a number of interesting issues.
Good
Thank
night.
you very much.